Berlin, 15th of May, 1945. The war in Europe is over. Soviet flags hang from the Reichstag. Wehrmacht soldiers shuffle into captivity. The Third Reich exists only in smouldering rubble and traumatized memory. But beneath the streets of German cities, in collapsed basements and buried factories, inside unexploded British bombs, tiny clockwork mechanisms continue their patient work. Brass gears mesh and turn, escapements tick forward, springs uncoil with mathematical precision. These are not duds, these are not failures. These bombs are working exactly as designed, counting down to detonations that will come weeks, months, even years after the armistice. They represent one of the most psychologically devastating weapons ever deployed. A bomb that transformed the entire urban landscape into a potential death trap long after the shooting stopped. The delayed action bomb turned cities into permanent battlefields where the enemy was invisible. The front line was everywhere, and the war never truly ended. It was an engineering solution to a tactical nightmare, and it killed with cold mechanical indifference years after peace was declared. By 1940, the Royal Air Force faced an impossible problem. Bombing German industrial targets at night produced disappointing results. Factories were repaired within days, railway junctions reopened within hours. Docks resumed operations before the smoke cleared. Reconnaissance photographs showed undeniable evidence. British bombs damaged German infrastructure, but they did not cripple it. The Wehrmacht's logistics machine absorbed the punishment and carried on. Every ton of high explosive dropped seemed to produce only temporary inconvenience. The mathematics were brutal. A typical raid on a marshalling yard might damage track and rolling stock, but German repair crews, organised, efficient, relentless, could restore 70% of capacity within 12 hours. Within 3 days, the target was fully operational again. The RAF was expending crews, aircraft and ordnance at an unsustainable rate to achieve tactical effects that evaporated faster than the bomb craters cooled. Conventional weapons simply could not generate lasting disruption. Worse still, predictability worked against the attackers. German civil defence knew exactly what to expect. When bombers departed, repair crews moved in immediately. There was no uncertainty, no ongoing danger. The bombing campaign followed a rhythm that the enemy could manage. Raid, damage, repair, resume. The cycle was almost industrial in its reliability. British planners studied the problem from every angle. They needed weapons that did not simply destroy targets. They needed weapons that prevented repair. They needed something that would keep German workers away from bombed facilities. They needed a bomb that continued fighting after it landed. What they required was not bigger explosions, but time itself weaponized against the enemy. The answer emerged from the drawing offices at RAF Farnborough and the research facilities at Woolwich Arsenal. Engineers developed what they designated the number 17 clockwork fuze, a mechanical timer of devastating sophistication. The device was roughly the size of a thermos flask, machined from brass and steel to tolerances that would challenge a Swiss watchmaker. Inside its cylindrical housing sat a spring-driven escapement mechanism connected to a detonator circuit. Wind the spring, set the dial, screw it into a bomb, and the timer would count down with remorseless accuracy. The mechanism was brilliantly simple. A mainspring provided motive force, regulated by an escapement, the same principle that drives mechanical clocks. The timer could be set for delays ranging from 30 minutes to 72 hours, though some variants extended to 17 days. Crucially, the mechanism required no electrical power, no batteries to fail, no circuits to corrode. Pure mechanical clockwork wound tight and sealed against moisture, shock, and chemical contamination. Manufacturing took place at multiple locations to prevent disruption from German counterbombing. The primary production facility operated in Chorley, Lancashire, where skilled machinists produced components to exacting specifications. Each timer underwent rigorous testing. Springs were measured for consistency. Escapements were timed across temperature ranges. Detonator contacts were checked for reliable electrical connection. Quality control rejected any unit showing the slightest deviation. A sticky escapement or weak spring could mean the difference between a bomb exploding on schedule or becoming an inert lump of metal. The complete bomb weighed between 250 and 500 pounds, depending on the model. A standard 500-pound delayed action bomb contained roughly 285 pounds of amatol explosive, a mixture of ammonium nitrate and TNT chosen for its stability and insensitivity to shock. This was critical. The bomb needed to survive impact without detonating. Standard impact fuze were replaced with the number 17 timer, which screwed into the nose assembly. The tail fins were painted with distinctive colour bands, usually 2 yellow stripes, to identify delayed action weapons during loading and handling. Production numbers remain partially classified, but estimates suggest between 100,000 and 150,000 delayed action bombs were manufactured during the war. Bomber Command deployed them systematically from 1940 onwards, incorporating them into standard operations at ratios of roughly 1 delayed action weapon for every 3 conventional high-explosive bombs. If you're finding this interesting, a quick subscribe helps more than you know. The operational doctrine was coldly calculated. RAF raids would drop a mixture of conventional and delayed action bombs onto a target. Some exploded immediately, creating the expected damage. Others burrowed into the ground, nestled into basements, lodged in sewer systems, or embedded themselves in factory foundations, and then went silent. German workers approaching the bombed area faced an impossible choice: begin repairs immediately and risk annihilation when a hidden bomb detonated, or evacuate and wait, ceding the British precisely what conventional bombing could not achieve: extended operational disruption. Records from Hamburg document one particularly effective deployment. After a raid on the port's facilities in March 1941, German authorities identified 17 unexploded bombs. Bomb disposal teams located and began defusing operations on 9 devices. Then, 4 days after the raid, one of the presumed safe areas detonated, killing 12 workers and collapsing a crane that had just been repaired. The explosion triggered a complete evacuation of the entire dock complex. Work ceased for 11 days, not because of damage from the initial raid, but because no one could guarantee which bomb would detonate next. The Ruhr Valley Industrial Zone saw concentrated use of delayed action weapons. Steelworks and chemical plants there operated continuously, making them priority targets. British planners recognised that even temporary shutdowns imposed cumulative costs on German war production. A single delayed action bomb that closed a factory for a week achieved more than 10 conventional bombs that merely damaged equipment. The psychological effect multiplied the tactical impact. Workers grew reluctant to return to facilities that might still contain live ordnance. Documentation from resistance groups in occupied territories reveals another dimension to the weapon's effectiveness. In the Netherlands and Belgium, German-controlled factories received delayed action bombs with deliberate precision. Workers welcomed the enforced shutdowns, which allowed them to avoid contributing to German war production without risking accusations of sabotage. The bombs created plausible deniability. No one could be blamed for refusing to work in an area that might explode at any moment. German attempts to counter the delayed action bomb reveal its effectiveness through their desperation and inadequacy. The Luftwaffe deployed its own long-delay fuses, but they never matched British production quality or psychological impact. German clockwork mechanisms proved less reliable, with higher dud rates and shorter maximum delay periods. Where British timers could achieve 17-day delays with reasonable confidence, German equivalents struggled past 72 hours. The numbers tell the story. British delayed action bombs had an estimated activation rate of 85 to 90%, meaning roughly 15% failed to detonate as designed. This was considered acceptable given the manufacturing challenges and deployment conditions. German delayed action fuses achieved closer to 70% activation, a significant disadvantage that limited their tactical utility. American forces developed their own delayed action weapons, but they approached the concept differently. American designs favored anti-personnel deployment rather than area denial. The M1A1 bomb featured chemical long-delay fuses with delays up to 48 hours, primarily intended to catch repair crews and first responders. The American doctrine emphasized immediate tactical disruption over long-term strategic paralysis, a fundamental difference in operational philosophy. The British version's superiority lay in its mechanical reliability and operational flexibility. The number 17 fuse could be set to precise intervals, allowing raid planners to orchestrate detonation sequences that maximize psychological impact. A target might receive bombs set to explode at 3 hours, 12 hours, 36 hours, and 72 hours after the raid. Each detonation reset the evacuation clock, keeping the area closed for extended periods. The concept influenced post-war munitions development significantly. Modern cluster munitions and area denial weapons trace their conceptual lineage directly to wartime delayed action bombs. The principle of transforming terrain into persistent hazards became a foundation of late 20th century weapons design, though international treaties have since restricted many such applications. Soviet forces adopted delayed action principles extensively during the Cold War, producing variants with delays measured in weeks rather than days. The actual historical impact remains difficult to quantify precisely. German records from the period are incomplete, complicated by the chaos of wartime administration and deliberate destruction of documents before surrender. Post-war assessments suggest delayed action bombs reduced German industrial output by amounts ranging from 3 to 7%, seemingly modest numbers that disguise enormous cumulative effects across years of total war. The psychological dimension defies statistical measurement. German workers reported persistent anxiety about returning to bombed facilities. Civil defense organizations spent increasing resources on bomb detection and disposal rather than actual repair work. Factory managers padded recovery timelines to account for ordnance clearance, creating systemic inefficiencies that compounded across the entire war economy. More darkly, delayed action bombs continued killing long after military necessity ended. The final documented fatality from a British delayed action bomb occurred in Bremen in 1947, more than 2 years after Germany's surrender. Construction workers excavating a building foundation struck a corroded 500-pound bomb that had been buried since a 1943 raid. The timer had long since ceased, but the impact of the excavator's bucket completed the electrical circuit. 3 men died instantly. The explosion destroyed 2 post-war reconstruction projects and injured 17 civilians, most of them children playing in nearby rubble. German cities still discover these weapons during construction projects. Hamburg, Cologne, and Berlin maintain dedicated bomb disposal units that respond to discoveries with depressing regularity. Modern detection equipment and disposal protocols have reduced the danger, but the weapons remain lethal. In 2019, a 500-pound British delayed action bomb discovered in Cologne required the evacuation of 25,000 residents before disposal teams could render it safe. The timer mechanism had corroded away decades earlier, but the explosive remained viable. Surviving examples exist in museums across Britain and Germany. The Imperial War Museum in London displays a complete number 17 fuse alongside a cutaway 500-pound bomb, showing the internal mechanism. The German National Museum in Munich maintains a collection of diffused delayed action weapons recovered from various sites. Their yellow identification bands still visible beneath layers of rust and soil staining. These artifacts remain behind reinforced glass. Even inert, they command respect. Return to that Berlin basement in May 1945. Soviet soldiers patrol streets lined with rubble. Refugees pick through ruins looking for food, furniture, anything salvageable. Somewhere beneath their feet, buried under 3 meters of collapsed masonry, a British bomb lies waiting. Its timer stopped weeks ago. The mainspring has fully unwound. The detonator circuit stands ready. All it requires now is the wrong vibration, the unlucky footfall, the unfortunate excavation that completes the connection. The war ended, but the war did not end. Peace was declared, but peace did not arrive. The bombs continued their work because that was what they were built to do. To kill without mercy, without discretion, without awareness that the conflict that spawned them had concluded. They killed soldiers and civilians alike. They killed Nazis and their victims indiscriminately. They killed in service to a strategic objective that had already been achieved, rendering their continued lethality not just tragic, but meaningless. Between 1940 and 1945, British manufacturers produced over 100,000 clockwork mechanisms designed for a single purpose: to make time itself a weapon. They succeeded, absolutely. Those bombs transformed urban warfare into something that transcended traditional military boundaries. They created a battlefield that existed in 4 dimensions, where the 4th dimension, time, became as deadly as any explosive force. The delayed action bomb achieved what conventional weapons could not. It did not merely destroy infrastructure, it destroyed certainty. It did not simply kill enemies, it killed the assumption that peace meant safety. It was weird, yes, unconventional certainly, but it was also brilliantly effective, achieving tactical objectives that survived the conflict itself. 80 years later, German bomb disposal teams still excavate these weapons from construction sites and riverbanks. They will continue finding them for decades more. Each discovery serves as a mechanical ghost, a steel reminder that some wars end in documents and ceremonies, whilst others end one bomb at a time, in explosions that echo across generations. The weird British bomb that killed enemies after the war was over. Some of them are still killing.